The mechanic woke up before sunrise, as he did every day. The first light of morning barely touched the small room he called home, but he didn't mind. He had learned to live with little, and he knew the value of starting the day early. The house was quiet except for the soft breathing of his children still asleep, and the faint sound of the old clock ticking on the wall. He took a deep breath and rubbed his hands together, preparing himself for another long day at the garage. His life was not easy. Every day felt like a struggle, but he had never complained. The garage where he worked was small, its walls worn and cracked, and the floor covered in grease stains that never seemed to go away. Tools were scattered in every corner, and the air always smelled of oil and metal. Yet to him, this little place was everything. It was where he made his living, where he poured all his effort, and where he had a chance to provide for his family. He quickly ate the simple breakfast he had prepared the night before: some bread, a boiled egg, and a little tea. He knew it was not much, but it would have to do. His mind was already racing through the day ahead, thinking about the cars he had to repair, the bills he had to pay, and the little money that never seemed enough. Yet despite the worries, he carried a calmness about him. There was a quiet pride in being honest, in working with his hands, and in knowing that whatever he earned it fairly. As he walked to the garage, he greeted the neighbors with a small wave and a smile. Some nodded back, others waved hurriedly, busy with their own mornings. The streets were empty except for the occasional passerby. He enjoyed this time of day, when the world was still waking up and everything felt peaceful. The sun slowly rose, casting golden light on the dusty roads and the small shops that were beginning to open. At the garage, he immediately got to work. There was always something to fix, some problem waiting to be solved. A car with a flat tire, a scooter that wouldn't start, an engine that made strange noises. Each vehicle presented a new challenge. He treated each one with care, knowing that behind every car was a person relying on him. Some customers were wealthy, some were poor, but he never judged. Everyone who came to him deserved respect and honest work. Despite the long hours, he found satisfaction in solving problems. When he fixed a car, when the engine roared back to life, he felt a sense of accomplishment. It was small victories like these that kept him going, moments that reminded him that even in a life of struggle, there could be pride and joy. Life at home was not easy either. His wife worked hard to manage the household, stretching every penny to provide for the children. She understood the challenges he faced and never complained, but he could see the worry in her eyes. Their children were young, full of energy and curiosity, and he wanted to give them more than he could afford. Sometimes at night he would lie awake thinking about how he could give them a better life, wondering if his efforts would ever be enough. One morning, as he was fixing a motorcycle that had been brought in late the previous evening, he noticed something unusual. A sleek, shiny car slowly drove past the garage. It was unlike anything he had seen before in his town. Its paint gleamed and it moved smoothly, almost silently, unlike the older cars he worked on every day. He watched as it stopped near the corner of the street. Something about it caught his attention. A few minutes later, the car rolled forward a little and then stopped abruptly. The driver got out, looking frustrated. He peered under the hood, then opened the door and stepped back, clearly unsure what to do. The mechanic noticed the man's expensive clothes and polished shoes. It was obvious he was not from around here. He could have ignored it, as many people might, but he had a habit of helping anyone in need. "Good morning, sir," he called, walking toward the car. "Is everything okay?" The man looked up, startled. I think my car broke down. I don't know much about engines," he admitted, his voice tinged with frustration and impatience. "Don't worry," the mechanic said calmly. "I can take a look. Let's see what's going on." The man hesitated for a moment, looking at the small, worn-down garage and then at the mechanic. He seemed unsure, almost judging the place, but his car clearly needed help. "All right, if you think you can fix it," he said, a little reluctantly. The mechanic opened the hood carefully, inspecting the engine. He listened to the sounds, checked the fluids, and examined the parts with practiced hands. Within minutes, he had identified the problem, a minor issue that would have cost the man a small fortune at a fancy service center. "This should be an easy fix," he said, his voice calm and confident. "It won't take long and it's not expensive." The man seemed skeptical. "Are you sure?" "This is a high-end car. I don't want it ruined," the mechanic smiled. "I've fixed many cars, sir. Just trust me." As he worked, he noticed the man watching closely. It was clear that the man was not used to seeing someone work with such patience and care, someone who treated the task not as a job, but as something personal. The mechanic didn't rush, didn't complain, and didn't ask for extra money. He just worked. By the time the sun was higher in the sky, the car was running perfectly again. The mechanic wiped his hands, which were now stained with grease, and looked up at the man. "You're all set. It should run smoothly now." The man's eyes widened. "That was it. Fast, and it's working perfectly. How much do I owe you?" The mechanic shook his head. "Just pay what you can. Don't worry about the rest." The man seemed taken aback. He pulled out his wallet, ready to pay a generous amount, but the mechanic refused to accept more than a fair price. There was something about this honesty, this humility, that struck the man deeply. He had never met someone who cared more about doing the right thing than making money. As the man drove away, he glanced back at the mechanic, feeling a mix of surprise and admiration. Little did the mechanic know this small act of kindness, this simple decision to help without judgment or greed, would set in motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. The mechanic returned to his workbench, smiling quietly to himself. Life would continue as it always had, with struggles and challenges, but moments like these reminded him why he kept going. Helping others even when life was hard gave him purpose, and he didn't realize yet. But his kindness that morning would not only help a stranger, it would change everything he had ever known about luck, opportunity, and the power of doing good. The children would wake up soon, the town would bustle with its usual sounds, and he would face another day of work. Yet, in the quiet moments between grease-stained hands and the smell of oil, the mechanic carried a secret hope. Maybe, just maybe, life had something extraordinary in store for him. The day passed slowly in the small town. The mechanic continued his work, fixing old scooters, repairing brakes, and helping customers with worn-out engines. Each car and bike carried a story, and he treated every vehicle as if it mattered because to the owner it did. The morning's encounter with the man in the luxury car stayed on his mind. He couldn't help but think about the surprise in the man's eyes, the way he hesitated before trusting him. There was something unusual in that moment, something that made him feel both proud and a little anxious. By late afternoon, the garage had quieted down. A few regular customers came by, greeted him warmly, and left after a short chat. The mechanic cleaned his tools, organized his workbench, and thought about the family dinner waiting at home. Life had a steady rhythm even in its struggles, and he had grown used to the routine. Still, the image of the luxury car and the well-dressed man kept returning to his thoughts. Later, just as he was about to close the garage for the day, he heard the hum of a car approaching from the dusty street. At first, he assumed it was another ordinary vehicle, but then he saw the familiar shine, the sleek body, and instantly recognized the luxury car from that morning. He felt a mix of curiosity and nervousness. The driver had returned. Why? The man stepped out of the car, this time wearing a more relaxed expression. He didn't look as frustrated as he had in the morning. Instead, there was a quiet respect in his gaze as he approached. "Hello again," he said, his tone polite, almost hesitant. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." The mechanic shook his head, smiling. "Not at all. What brings you back?" The man hesitated for a moment, then looked around the small garage, his eyes lingering on the walls, the tools, and the worn floor. "I've been thinking about this morning," he said finally. "You didn't just fix my car. You did it with honesty. I've never met someone who works like that without thinking about the money first." The mechanic shrugged modestly. "I do my job. That's all." The man studied him for a moment, clearly impressed. "No, it's more than that. It's rare to meet someone like you. Most people would have tried to overcharge or sell me something unnecessary. But you just helped." The mechanic felt a little embarrassed by the praise. He wasn't used to compliments, especially from someone so wealthy and important looking. "I'm glad your car is working," he said softly. "That's enough for me." The man nodded, then paused as if weighing his next words. "I don't usually do this, but I want to know more about you. About your life, your work, your family. You have something I rarely see. Honesty, patience, and dedication. And I want to understand it." The mechanic was taken aback. He had never thought a stranger, let alone someone so powerful, would care about his life. But there was something genuine in the man's curiosity, and he found himself opening up. He began talking about his early days, about how he had learned to fix cars from his father, who had been a mechanic before him. He described the long hours, the small income, the constant struggle to make ends meet, and the pride he felt in working honestly. He talked about his wife, who managed the household with quiet strength, and their children, who were his greatest joy and his biggest responsibility. The man listened intently, nodding occasionally, his eyes reflecting a mix of surprise and admiration. "You work so hard and yet you never complain," he said finally. "You carry so much on your shoulders, but you still manage to be kind and helpful. That's extraordinary." The mechanic smiled faintly. "Life is not easy, but complaining doesn't help. I just do what I can. If I help someone even a little, it makes my day better. That's all." The man seemed to ponder this, then took a step closer to the mechanic. "I have seen many people in my life," he said slowly, "but very few who have a heart like yours. Most people focus on themselves, on wealth, on status. You focus on others. It's rare." The mechanic felt a warm sensation in his chest. He wasn't used to hearing such words, especially from someone who had everything money could buy. "Thank you," he said quietly. "That means a lot coming from you." The man smiled, a genuine smile that seemed to reach his eyes. "I want to do something for you," he said. "Not charity, not a handout, but something that can help you and your family. You deserve it." The mechanic shook his head, feeling a mix of embarrassment and disbelief. I don't need anything. I have enough to get by. I just work hard, that's all." The man looked at him seriously. "No, what you have is more than most people. But I see potential in you, potential that deserves a chance. I want to give you that chance." The mechanic was silent for a moment, unsure how to respond. He had faced struggles all his life, but he had never imagined that his simple life, his hard work, and his kindness could attract someone like this. He wanted to refuse, to insist that he didn't need help. But something in the man's eyes told him that this offer was sincere. "Tell me," the man continued, "have you ever thought about expanding your garage, learning new techniques, or even starting your own business? You have the skill, the dedication, and the integrity. All you need is an opportunity." The mechanic's mind raced. He had dreamed of a better garage, of providing more for his family. But those dreams had always felt distant, impossible. Now here was someone offering not just help, but a chance to make those dreams real. He felt a mixture of hope, fear, and gratitude. I've thought about it," he admitted, "but I never thought it would be possible. Everything costs so much and I barely make enough to cover daily expenses." The man nodded. "I understand. But sometimes a little support can change everything. I want to help you reach that potential. I can provide resources, guidance, or even connections to grow your garage. You don't have to struggle alone anymore." The mechanic's heart pounded. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. For a lifetime, he had worked tirelessly, barely making ends meet, and now someone was offering him a chance to change everything, not as charity, but as an investment in his skill and character. I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Say yes," the man said gently. "Say yes to an opportunity. Say yes to a chance to show what you can do. You deserve it." The mechanic took a deep breath, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. He thought of his children, of his wife, of the small, cramped garage that had served him for years. He thought of the long nights, the hard work, and the constant struggle. And then he thought of the chance to change all of that, not just for himself, but for his family and his community. "All right," he said finally, his voice steady. I'll try. I'll do my best." The man smiled broadly, a warmth in his expression that made the mechanic feel seen in a way he had never experienced before. "Good," he said. "That's all I ask. The rest we will figure out together." As the sun began to set, casting golden light over the small town, the mechanic felt a sense of hope he had not known in years. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future where life could be different, where hard work and honesty could lead to real opportunity. That evening, as he returned home, he shared the news with his wife. Her eyes widened with surprise and tears welled up as she listened. The children, sensing something special, gathered around, asking questions and laughing with curiosity. It was a moment of joy and relief, a feeling that life could indeed hold more than struggle. As they sat together for a simple dinner, the mechanic realized that kindness and integrity, qualities he had always valued, had brought unexpected change into his life. The small act of helping a stranger had created a connection that could transform everything. and though he did not yet know the full path ahead, he felt ready to take the next step, with courage, humility, and hope. Little did he know, the days ahead would bring challenges, learning, and opportunities beyond anything he had ever imagined. But for now, as the night settled over the town and the stars began to shine, he allowed himself to simply feel gratitude for the man who had seen him, for his family, and for the small, quiet courage that had guided his life so far. The future was uncertain, but the seed of change had been planted, and with it, a new chapter of hope and possibility began. The next morning, the mechanic woke up with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He had spent the night thinking about the conversation from the previous day, replaying every word in his mind. The idea that someone had noticed his hard work and honesty and wanted to offer him a real opportunity felt almost unreal. He knew life was not about instant change, but still, he felt a spark of hope he had not experienced in years. He dressed quickly and headed to the garage, his mind buzzing with possibilities. As he opened the doors and stepped inside, the familiar smell of oil, metal, and dust greeted him. It was comforting in its own way, reminding him that no matter what happened, he still had the skills, the experience, and the determination that had carried him this far. The luxury car from the previous day was parked outside. The CEO had left it overnight, apparently trusting the mechanic to take care of it. That alone surprised him. Most people with money and influence would never leave such a valuable car in the hands of someone they had just met. Yet this man had confidence in him, and that trust weighed on the mechanic's mind. He wanted to make sure he did everything perfectly. As he worked, the mechanic thought about the lessons life had taught him. He had learned patience, resilience, and the importance of honesty. He had learned that small, consistent efforts mattered more than grand gestures, and he had learned to take pride in his work no matter how modest the setting. Today, all of those lessons felt more important than ever. The man returned mid-morning, this time carrying a folder and a small notebook. He walked toward the garage with a purposeful stride, his expression calm but expectant. "Good morning," he said, his tone friendly. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." The mechanic smiled. "Good morning, sir." "Not at all. I was just checking a few things on your car." The man nodded, then glanced around the small garage. "You've made this place feel very professional," he said, his voice appreciative. "It may be small, but the effort is visible." "I like that." The mechanic felt a sense of pride. He had never thought of his garage as anything extraordinary, but hearing someone acknowledge his hard work in this way was satisfying. "Thank you," he said simply. The man handed him the folder. "I want to show you something. It's not much, but it's a start. A small plan, some contacts and resources that can help you grow your garage. I believe in giving opportunities, not charity." The mechanic opened the folder carefully. Inside were notes about suppliers, potential clients, repair techniques, and even suggestions for improving the workspace. It was practical, useful information that could make a real difference. He glanced up at the man, feeling overwhelmed. I don't know how to thank you. This is incredible," the man shook his head. "No thanks needed. Just make the most of it. Work hard, stay honest, and help others. That's all I ask." As the day progressed, the mechanic began implementing some of the suggestions. He cleaned the garage thoroughly, organized tools, and set up a small area for customer service. It was a lot of work, but he enjoyed every minute. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, a chance to prove himself not just as a mechanic, but as someone who could build something meaningful for his family and community. Throughout the day, customers came and went. Some noticed the changes and complimented him, while others were curious about the new system. The mechanic explained his methods with patience and humility, never boasting, but always showing care for every vehicle and every person who walked through his doors. By the afternoon, the CEO returned again, this time observing quietly. He watched how the mechanic interacted with customers, how he handled problems, and how he treated every person with respect. It was clear to him that this was not a man seeking recognition or wealth. He genuinely cared about his work and the people around him. "Impressive," the man said finally, breaking the silence. "You don't just fix cars. You build trust. You make people feel respected. That's rare, and it's valuable in every way." The mechanic felt a warm glow of pride. He didn't think of himself as remarkable. To him, he was just doing what he had to do, what was right. Yet, hearing this acknowledgement from someone with so much experience and success reinforced a quiet truth he had always believed. Honesty and kindness mattered. The day continued with small victories. The mechanic successfully repaired a complicated engine, guided a young apprentice in learning proper techniques, and even helped a neighbor with a minor vehicle problem for free. Each small success felt amplified because of the renewed energy and confidence the CEO's interest had given him. Late in the afternoon, the CEO asked if he could speak privately. The mechanic nodded and they stepped aside. "I've been thinking," the man said, "about how to make this opportunity more meaningful. It's not enough to just provide contacts or suggestions. You have potential to grow, to reach more people, to make a real difference." The mechanic listened carefully. He felt both nervous and excited. I'm willing to do whatever it takes," he said honestly. The man smiled. "Good. I want to help you expand your skills, learn new techniques, and eventually manage more than just this small garage. You have integrity, talent, and dedication. With guidance and resources, you can create something bigger, something that benefits you, your family, and your community." For the mechanic, the words felt almost unreal. He had spent years working tirelessly, dreaming quietly of better days, but never imagining someone like this would offer such guidance. His mind raced with possibilities, from new equipment to training programs, from better tools to more clients. He imagined a garage that could employ more people, serve more customers, and provide stability and pride for his family. The CEO handed him a small notebook. "This is a schedule of workshops and training sessions. It's a starting point. You don't have to do everything at once. Take it step by step and focus on learning, improving, and growing. I'll be here to support you." The mechanic took the notebook carefully, his hands shaking slightly. I don't know what to say. This means so much to me." "Say yes," the man replied simply. "Say yes to learning, to growing, to seeing what you can achieve. That's all I ask." Over the next few weeks, the mechanic followed the plan closely. He attended workshops, learned new techniques, and applied them in the garage. He trained an apprentice who shared his enthusiasm and curiosity, teaching him not just to repair vehicles, but to understand and respect every customer. The garage began to change, slowly but noticeably. Customers appreciated the improved service. More people came in, and even the small town started noticing the transformation. Through it all, the mechanic remained humble. He didn't boast about the changes or the opportunities he was receiving. Instead, he focused on helping others, improving his work, and maintaining the honesty and integrity that had brought him this far. He knew that skill alone was not enough. Character mattered just as much. One afternoon, as he was finishing a repair, the CEO returned once again. He observed quietly, nodding approvingly at the progress. "You've done well," he said finally. "The garage is improving, your skills are growing, and you're setting an example for others. This is exactly what I hoped for." The mechanic smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance," he said sincerely. The man shook his head. "You did it. I just showed you a path. You walked it. That's what matters." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the town, the mechanic reflected on the journey so far. His life had already begun to change, not just in material ways, but in the way he felt about himself and his future. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of hope that was not fleeting, a belief that hard work, honesty, and kindness could truly open doors. That evening at home, he shared his experiences with his family. The children listened in awe as he described the new techniques he had learned and the changes in the garage. His wife's eyes sparkled with pride and gratitude. Together, they imagined a future filled with possibility, one where struggles were still present but no longer insurmountable. The mechanic went to bed that night with a sense of quiet satisfaction. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, mistakes, and setbacks, but he also knew that for the first time he had support, guidance, and the belief that he could achieve more than he had ever imagined. As he drifted off to sleep, he felt grateful, not just for the opportunity, but for the reminder that small acts of kindness, honesty, and hard work could ripple outward in ways that changed lives. The seed of change had been planted, and now it was up to him to nurture it, grow it, and see where it could lead. Little did he know, the coming days would test his patience, skill, and determination in ways he had never experienced before. But he felt ready. He had been given a chance and he intended to make the most of it. Days turned into weeks, and the small garage began to feel alive with new energy. The mechanic had been working harder than ever, but not with the same struggle-filled exhaustion of the past. There was a sense of purpose in everything he did now, a quiet determination to make the most of the opportunity that had been given to him. Every morning he arrived early, opening the garage doors to the soft light of dawn, feeling grateful for the chance to learn, grow, and provide more for his family. The CEO continued to visit regularly. Sometimes he observed quietly. Other times he offered guidance, always careful not to take over, letting the mechanic make his own decisions. The man's presence was reassuring, not intimidating, and the mechanic learned to value his mentorship without feeling pressured. Slowly, their relationship grew from one of mere assistance to mutual respect. One morning, the mechanic faced a challenge that tested both his skill and patience. A customer brought in a car that was badly damaged from an accident. The vehicle was expensive and the repairs were complicated. Most mechanics in town would have refused the job, fearing mistakes or the high cost of parts. But the mechanic didn't hesitate. He accepted the challenge, knowing it would be difficult but determined to prove himself. He examined the car carefully, taking notes, checking each part, and planning the repair step by step. It was exhausting work, and there were moments when he felt overwhelmed, wondering if he could complete the job perfectly. But he reminded himself of everything he had learned from the CEO's guidance: patience, careful observation, and trust in his own abilities. The CEO arrived in the afternoon, as if sensing the challenge. He watched silently, his eyes sharp but kind. "It's a difficult job," he said finally. "But I know you can handle it. Trust your instincts and don't rush. Take it one step at a time." The mechanic nodded, feeling encouraged. The words weren't just advice, they were a vote of confidence. He worked for hours, carefully repairing each damaged part, making adjustments, and testing the engine repeatedly. He took breaks only to wipe sweat from his brow and to check his progress. The process was slow but methodical, and the mechanic began to see the car slowly transform from a damaged wreck into a smoothly running vehicle. By the evening, the repair was complete. The car roared to life with a perfect engine sound, and the mechanic felt a surge of pride. It had been one of the most challenging repairs of his career, and he had completed it without shortcuts or compromises. He knew the customer would be impressed, but more importantly, he had proven to himself that his skills, determination, and honesty could overcome even the toughest challenges. The CEO approached, watching the mechanic's work with a satisfied smile. "Excellent," he said simply. "You handled this perfectly. Not many people could have done what you just did." The mechanic felt a deep sense of accomplishment, but he remained humble. "I just did what I could," he said softly. "The car had to work. That's all that mattered." The man shook his head. "No, it was more than that. You combined skill with integrity, patience, and focus. That's rare. That's why I believe in you." The next few days were filled with more challenges, each one testing the mechanic in different ways. Some repairs required new techniques he had learned, while others demanded creativity and problem-solving. Each success reinforced his confidence, and each setback taught him valuable lessons. The CEO continued to provide guidance, but always allowed the mechanic to make the decisions, fostering independence and self-belief. One afternoon, the mechanic received an unexpected visit from a local business owner. The man had heard about the improvements at the garage and wanted to discuss a potential partnership. He proposed providing steady work, recommending the mechanic's services to his clients, and even assisting with equipment upgrades. The mechanic was surprised and humbled. His reputation was beginning to grow, not because he had chased it, but because of the quality of his work and the honesty he had shown to everyone he served. Excited by this opportunity, he discussed it with the CEO, who encouraged him to proceed but advised careful planning. "Opportunities like this can change your path," the CEO said. "But make sure you're prepared. Don't rush. Take each step with thought and care." The mechanic followed the advice, meeting the business owner, making plans, and carefully considering how the garage could expand without losing the personal touch that made it special. He realized that growth wasn't just about money or size, it was about providing better service, helping more people, and staying true to the values that had brought him this far. Evenings at home were now filled with conversations about dreams and possibilities. The mechanic shared his plans with his family, and they discussed ways to improve the garage, manage the growing workload, and create a future that was brighter than anything they had imagined before. His wife's eyes sparkled with hope, and his children listened eagerly, their excitement infectious. Life felt fuller, more promising, and more meaningful than it had in years. Despite the progress, challenges continued to appear. One day, a customer arrived with an urgent repair request, needing a car fixed for an early morning trip. The parts were difficult to find and time was limited. The mechanic felt the pressure, but he remembered the lessons he had learned: patience, focus, and careful planning. He worked tirelessly, sourcing parts, making adjustments, and coordinating with his team. The car was ready just in time, running perfectly, and the customer left grateful and impressed. The CEO observed all of this, quietly noting the mechanic's dedication, problem-solving skills, and ability to handle pressure. "You are growing not just as a mechanic, but as a leader," he said later. "People trust you, rely on you, and learn from you. That's the mark of true success." The mechanic felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. It wasn't just about the money or the recognition. It was about knowing that his work mattered, that he was making a difference in people's lives, and that he was building something that would last. One evening, after a long day, the mechanic sat alone in the garage, reflecting on how far he had come. He thought about the morning when he had first met the CEO, about the small act of kindness that had started everything, and about the lessons he had learned along the way. He realized that life had a way of rewarding honesty, patience, and dedication in ways that were often unexpected. The days that followed brought more opportunities. A local newspaper wrote a small piece about the garage, praising the quality of work and the integrity of its owner. People from nearby towns began to visit, curious to see the mechanic who had turned his humble garage into a place of trust and reliability. Each visit, each conversation, reinforced the idea that hard work, honesty, and kindness could open doors that money alone could never unlock. Through it all, the mechanic remained humble. He never forgot the early mornings, the struggles, and the small victories that had built his character. He treated every customer with respect, every vehicle with care, and every opportunity with thoughtfulness. And in doing so, he inspired those around him, his apprentice, his family, his neighbors, to believe in the power of integrity and perseverance. One late afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the garage, the CEO returned for a visit. He walked slowly, observing the improvements, the organized tools, and the busy team. "You've come a long way," he said. "Not just in skills, but in character. You handle challenges, help others, and grow every day. That's rare, and it's remarkable." The mechanic smiled, feeling a quiet pride. "I'm just trying to do my best," he said softly. The man nodded. "And your best is enough. More than enough. But remember, this is just the beginning. There is still more you can achieve, more lives you can touch, and more challenges you can overcome. Keep learning, keep growing, and never lose the values that brought you here." The mechanic listened carefully, absorbing the words. He knew that success was not just about money or recognition. It was about integrity, patience, and dedication. He felt ready for whatever came next, confident that with hard work and honesty, he could handle any challenge. As night fell, the mechanic closed the garage doors and walked home, feeling a sense of fulfillment that he had never known before. He shared the day's events with his family, celebrating the successes and discussing the next steps. The children laughed, the wife smiled, and the mechanic felt a deep sense of connection, knowing that they were all part of this journey together. That night, as he lay down to sleep, he reflected on the past weeks. The small acts of kindness, the guidance from the CEO, and his own determination had created a transformation that went beyond repairs and money. It was a transformation of hope, character, and possibility. And though he didn't yet know the full extent of what lay ahead, he felt ready to embrace it, knowing that life could change in ways he had never imagined, all because of honesty, hard work, and the courage to help others. The mechanic woke up early that morning with a quiet sense of anticipation. Life had changed so much over the past weeks that even small routines now felt different. Each day brought new challenges, new opportunities, and a growing sense of purpose. The garage had transformed from a small, humble space into a place that hummed with activity, learning, and possibility. Customers were coming from neighboring towns, apprentices were learning with enthusiasm, and even the community was beginning to notice the change. Yet, even with all this progress, the mechanic felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Today, the CEO had invited him for a meeting that could alter the course of his life. It wasn't just about guidance or advice anymore. Something bigger was on the horizon. He wondered what it could be, feeling a combination of hope and apprehension. When he arrived at the garage, he found the CEO waiting outside, leaning against the hood of his polished car, as if he had been expecting him. "Good morning," the man said warmly. "Are you ready for today?" The mechanic nodded, trying to hide the flutter of nerves. "I think so. I've been preparing," the CEO smiled. "Good. Today we take a step that will matter not just for you, but for everyone around you." They drove together to a nearby town, the sleek car moving smoothly along the road. The mechanic tried to focus on the journey, but his mind was full of questions. What did the CEO mean by taking a step? What could possibly change so much in one day? He had been learning, growing, and expanding the garage steadily. But he hadn't expected something dramatic to happen so suddenly. Finally, they arrived at a modern office building. The CEO led the mechanic inside, and they walked through polished hallways until they reached a meeting room. Inside were several people, all dressed in professional attire, waiting with polite smiles. The mechanic felt a wave of nervousness. He had never been in a place like this before. The CEO introduced him to everyone. "This is the man I told you about. His skill, honesty, and dedication are exceptional. Today we're here to discuss an opportunity for him, one that could change his life forever." The mechanic listened quietly, feeling overwhelmed. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but the seriousness of the moment impressed upon him that this was significant. One by one, the people in the room spoke, expressing their interest in supporting his growth, sharing ideas, and explaining how they could help him expand his garage, train more mechanics, and serve a larger community. The mechanic tried to absorb everything. He had never imagined such an opportunity, and yet here it was unfolding before him. He realized that his years of hard work, honesty, and kindness, qualities he had always valued, had created this moment. What had started as a simple act of helping a stranger had grown into a chance to transform his life. After the meeting, the CEO spoke privately with him. "You've earned this chance," he said. "Not because of money or connections, but because of who you are. Your integrity, work ethic, and willingness to help others are what brought you here. Now it's time to take the next step." The mechanic felt a mix of disbelief and gratitude. I don't know what to say. I never imagined anything like this could happen." "You don't need to say anything," the CEO replied. "Just do your best as you always have. Everything else will follow." The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Plans were made to expand the garage, new equipment was delivered, and training programs were set up for apprentices. The mechanic worked tirelessly, balancing the new responsibilities with his ongoing repairs and customer service. It was challenging, but he felt more alive than ever before. Each day was filled with learning, growth, and the satisfaction of seeing progress. The local community watched in amazement as the garage transformed. People who had once doubted the mechanic's abilities now praised his work, admired his dedication, and sought his guidance. His reputation grew not just as a skilled mechanic, but as a person of integrity and kindness who genuinely cared about others. One afternoon, a former customer returned, this time with a different kind of request. He wanted to help the mechanic expand further, offering financial support to establish a training program for young mechanics. The mechanic was humbled. He realized